Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. I'm joined once more by Luke of Serum Lake and also Serum Lake Comics now, which is how we
Yeah.
ended up talking again because I saw the comics channel pop up and that you're just on top of all of the absolute things that are coming out. And so I was like, yes, I too am reading all of them, but not talking about them. So I was like, we need to figure out a way to discuss it. And then you emailed back and we're like, the anniversary's coming up. And that just seemed very perfect. So welcome
Well,
again.
no, thank you for having me. And it seemed very fortuitous that you got in touch. It was almost like fate, wasn't it?
The timing, it all ended up working out. So when did you get into the absolute? Were you there from the jump or
Yeah.
like
Yeah, I was there from day one because I kind of like these alternate universe stories. I was always a big fan of like Elseworlds and stuff growing up.
Mhm.
They were big when I was a kid. I remember I really loved Batman Dracula Red Rain. And
Mhm.
DC did this whole line of like Elseworld annuals one year, and I bought
Yes.
every single one, even if I wasn't reading the series. Like I wasn't reading Justice League Europe, but I'm like, I'm getting that annual.
I love that they've collected them now in just
Yeah.
collections. You can go get them. Like, that's perfect. I always go and grab them whenever they release a new one because I think they're really interesting. And this is really a continuation and ramping up of that concept in a very controlled and tight way. It's something that I really appreciate about it. I was editing before we started talking a DCKO video. And
Mm.
in that, it has a panel that just very succinctly explains the absolute universe and everything going on with it and how it was created and all of that stuff. And it's just something that I really appreciate how much general kind of control there feels like there is across the line, consistency wise, even if they are
Mm.
quite different from each other in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I just read DCKO today, actually. And yes, there are some interesting pages in there that made me go, yes,
Let them fight.
yes.
Oh, I'm gonna upload that later. I'm actually relatively on time for once. So I'm like, I'm gonna get that up actually. X-Men super fan Emma Frost, thank you very much for gifting some memberships. It is very much appreciated. The most recent absolute thing I read, and I saw that you talked about as well, was Absolute Evil, which
Yes.
the
Yeah.
villain, the meeting of the villains and their monologue issue, which I adore.
Yes. Yeah, I watched your video about it actually, and I think you said something along the lines of the purple prose might be a bit too much for people. And I was like, do people not like this? I'm just in my little bubble there going, yes, this is great. This is wonderful. Tell me more.
I love that kind of slowing it down kind of issue, but then I
Mhm.
also am always mindful of the fact of the kind of headspace I'm coming at it from, where I'm reading all of them. So
Yeah.
for me, this very much feels like a slow down, like, okay, now we're going to slow it down a minute with the villains. They're going to explain to you all of this. And I loved the way they brought in the history of the
Mm.
mainline history and just tweaked it ever so slightly in a way that I found very fun. I mean, it's not a great universe to be the JSA in, but I
No.
think that's I think that's part of the point.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of obviously it's a very deliberate choice because people have a lot
Mhm.
of affection for the JSA. They've been around for a long time. They're the kindly
Yes.
old grandpa superheroes. So to see Jay Garrick get chucked into like the equivalent of a furnace, or what's happened with Hawkman. Oh dear, that's it hits you in the feels, doesn't it?
I really enjoyed the Hawkman design they gave him,
Yeah.
and that was one of the things where I did see across the fandom some people lamenting the fate of Absolute Oliver Queen,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
also, like Hawkman would never. But I'm like, that's kind of the point of this
Yeah.
universe is that the way that things have altered. For me personally, it always makes me think about, okay, which missing threads are leading to this? That's what always is fascinating to me. I'm like, is it because he wasn't part of the JSA? Is it because there's no
Mhm.
Shire? Like, what's going on here? Like, what kind of things could facilitate a change like this? And the fact that they had him do it, I
Mm.
felt was very significant when you go back to Adventure Comics 466, and he's the spokesman for the society who says the opposite, who's like, no, we're not doing it. We're disbanding. And so I was like, no, all of these choices are very deliberate.
Yes.
And I don't have like you don't have to agree or like all of them, but I think there is something to be respected in that they're not just throwing things out there to throw them out there. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. And I have seen some criticism of this line just in general, that it's so bleak and it's so almost overwhelming. But the thing to remember is we're still only 1 year in, and let's just for argument's sake say that it only runs for 5 years. That's like halfway through Act 1. They're setting up this insurmountable threat that probably will eventually be overcome. I mean, it's superhero comics. Of course it's going to get overcome in the end, right? Hopefully. But, you know, they have to set up the threat first. Otherwise, the victory isn't going to feel in any way near satisfying.
I don't think they all feel as bleak as each other. Like, for example, like Absolute Wonder Woman, I find, has a very hopeful energy most of the time because just of how Diana is in that book.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think Flash is that bleak either. It's very wholesome. It's about expressing your feelings and, you know, having deep personal connections with each other despite horrible things going on around you.
So, of all of them, which one do you think is your favorite, or do you have one?
It's tough because I love how over the top Absolute Batman is. So what Scott Snyder and Nick Dragotta have done there is they've looked at Frank Miller's All-Star Batman, right? The goddamn Batman. But they've actually done it properly. Right? They've actually thought about it a bit more than what can I say that will annoy people, right? Which I feel like was Frank Miller's whole modus operandi back then. But anyway. But I also really loved Absolute Martian Manhunter. I think that beautiful artwork, very what's the word I want to say? Very, like, it had a message that we needed to hear right now about how anyone can be corrupted by, you know, the bad ideas. It's not just a problem from one specific community. It affects everybody. Everybody can be impacted by it. But I think overall, I think my favorite is probably Wonder Woman, because it is this dark, oppressive world, but she is still this beacon of hope. She's literally cast into hell as an infant, and rather than it changing her, she changed it. And, you know, on the surface level, oh yeah, it's grim and gritty. Oh, she lost her arm. Oh, Steve Trevor was dead and now he's not. But it's not grim and gritty at all, really.
I'm trying to. When I think of them, it cycles for me in a similar way. Part of it depends upon what kind of mood I'm in, because they do have such different vibes. So depending upon how you're entering into it, you might want something more heady, you might want something more action based. But on the whole, I think fairly consistently for me, if I had to give it's hard. I really loved Martian Manhunter a lot. I thought that the synthesis of the art with the story was just so expertly done, and I loved how creative it got with its paneling and just the way that it put things forward and the way that it forced you to kind of read it differently at certain points, and the way that all tied into what it was going for thematically, and the way that it managed to make its theme tie to some of the classic Martian Manhunter lore with the fear of fire and like those kind of old enemies, and flipping it in such a way where it became the fear of this kind of miasma and smoke, and less about the actions themselves and more about the environment and the atmosphere that they can then facilitate and create. But at the same time, it would have these really fun moments like, oh, look, who remembers Chacos? And I remember Chacos and those kind of things. So that was definitely up there. Although I have heard some people say that they feel that it feels a bit disconnected from the rest of the line. They're kind of concerned about how you could bring him in, but I think that it could work. I also really like Green Lantern, because I really like the way that it is playing with really trying to alter the structure of the core along philosophical lines, and really going and playing with it in that way. I think in terms of pacing, it definitely has had a very slow burn kind of getting to it. I know some people note out there like, can we get on with it kind of thing. And it also is a bit more reliant, I feel like, on having a bit of a base knowledge, because when it really started to go hard into like, these are the levels and this is this, I'm like, this would be a bit easier, and it is a bit easier if you have some conceptual base knowledge of the Green Lantern lore already. But I do appreciate that it's something that you kind of have to sit with and think about a bit, which is also what I like about Wonder Woman. Although I have like slight, it's not beef with Wonder Woman, but just
I swear.
it's I really enjoy the book, and I think it's amazingly structured and paced. I think it's the best paced out of all of them. And again, it has a great marriage of art with the story. And even when they switched the guest artist for those couple of issues, it was still really solid.
Yeah.
It's just with Diana, I go back and forth because on the one hand, structurally for the story, it makes perfect sense the way that she is, and she's this beacon of hope and all of those kind of things. But at the same time, she's kind of perfect and flat for me at certain points because everybody else is like struggling and having like, you know, lots of angst. But because of how she's been raised and had to be raised, you kind of have Cersei having that angst over there for her in the mother role. And then she herself is very much just kind of able to go through everything, and that makes her very cool. So she has some of the coolest panels, big sword, you know, water trident, all of these, you know, kind of really cool moments. But in terms of being a fully fleshed out character, I think for me, I'm still waiting for her to have that moment where she's like, you know, has a kind of like, oh, like I'm up against something emotionally at the point in her life she is now, not as a child or something like that, but now. So I think I'm kind of waiting for that a little bit.
Yeah, they got close to that with the Queen Clea fight, didn't they? Because she had her internal monologue explaining her conflicted feelings and how releasing Clea
at
may
the
be
end
a
where
mistake.
she was like, then it will be my burden. Like at the end there. And I loved how they brought in Clea and they got her golden age stuff going on and all of that. Her almost her classic like H.G. Peters design too. I was like, oh, it's close. Like I really liked how they did that one.
Yes, yeah.
Also, Ryan Jones, thank you very much. It's appreciated.
Oh, hello, Ryan. How you doing? He's one of my people. But no, I see exactly what you're saying. I mean, I personally don't mind her being like this beacon of purity, just because everyone else is so flawed. So I kind of get that kind of variety in character that you're alluding to there. But you know, I completely see where you're coming from, though.
And then also I too appreciate how hard absolute Batman goes on occasion, where it's just like we're going for it, we're pushing things, we're earning the slightly higher rating, especially with how hard we're going to go with some of the villains and that kind of stuff. And I think that's really fun for Batman specifically, because Batman does have that similar focus on his villains as himself. So it's always important when you're crafting a Batman story to also be crafting interesting villains for him. And I think that this story has really started to also pay off the whole his villains are his friends thing at the start, whereas I think that took a little bit to get there, because the one thing about absolute Batman that I would say is that because of its more action-oriented pacing, there are moments where some of the emotional beats I feel like don't keep pace. Specifically when he was missing for all those months. And then people are just like, yeah, you were missing for months. I'm like, yes, you keep saying that, but I didn't feel that necessarily.
He should have grown like a big beard in the time, couldn't he? And then would have gone, aha, we can measure the passage of time by the length of his beard.
Well, I mean, last time he got hooked on Venom, he had a beard. So.
Yeah. And he was only underground for 30 days. That was very impressive beard growth.
Maybe that's part of what the Venom does. It's a side effect.
Just makes you really hairy as well. Actually, Bane is often depicted as being quite hairy, isn't he? So yeah, there's something to that.
Which one do you think you aren't as into?
Oh, well, I'm into them all. But
yes.
I think the two that I am least into are Green Lantern and The Flash, but for opposite reasons.
Okay.
You touched upon it earlier. So Green Lantern's been a bit slow, and it used the same format, the same structure for each issue. So it would have a scene in the present, and then scenes in the past, and then end on a scene in the present. And now doing that for 6 issues. Maybe it's my attention span has been completely riddled away. Obviously, I was keeping track of what was going on, but I was kind of fed up. I was like, I would just like to see an issue in the present day without jumping back and forth. And they did that with the latest one. And I really enjoyed it. But The Flash, I feel that perhaps this is intentional, given it's the fastest man alive, but it zips through the story. It's like, he has all of this emotional growth and development across a couple of panels. And I feel like he could do with a bit of breathing room. Now, they tried doing that with the Rogues origin issue, but that also was a bit too quick, and I felt like it didn't really say very much. I gather that next week's issue number 8 is going to share more on the origins of Fort Fox and what Barry Allen was up to. So I think my concerns will be allayed there a little bit. Get a bit more information, a bit more backstory, fill it in, and then I can, perhaps I'll enjoy it a bit more. But that's not to say that it's bad. It's not bad by any means. It's still good. It's still enjoyable. It's very earnest. It's very like talking about the feelings and the connection between Wally and Grodd. Touches my heart when I read it. But compare that to my reaction reading Absolute Batman, going, hell yeah, stab him in the eyes, go on, get him. It's completely the opposite.
I would agree that I feel the pacing of Absolute Flash is difficult for me as well, because even though it is focusing a lot on the internal life of Wally specifically, and you really get into that, for other characters, it does feel a bit rapid fire, such as the end of the last issue where it's like, let's do this together. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. I was like, that works, because that's kind of how his rogues are and his relationship with them in the main line. But I feel like I was getting that because I am familiar with the fact that the Flash traditionally does have a better relationship with his villains than other characters out there. So I'm really intrigued to learn more about, the potential corruption of Barry Allen and like what's going on with Thawne and all of those kind of things, and what's in the tubes that they found and all of that. So, like, those are the things I'm really interested in for Absolute Flash. I'm hoping that they can get to those a bit more.
Yeah, I agree. Just if they could just slow the pace just a little bit, that would be nice.
I feel like the one we haven't touched upon yet is Absolute Superman. It kind of
and I don't want to give the impression that I'm ambivalent about Superman or not interested either, because I love Superman. I think Absolute Superman's really great. I love the Brainiac origin issue because that was such a great take on Brainiac that kind of took elements from a lot of stuff that had come before, like the Colin Brainiac, the DCAU Brainiac being a synthetic person. And just kind of mashed them together to make something new and actually quite frightening. And I think they obviously telegraphed who the main villain was going to be in the first issue by naming the corporation's name Lazarus. Kind of gave it away. But it's really fresh to see Ra's al Ghul as the enemy of Superman and not going after Batman for a change.
I appreciate that change. There are some people who don't. They're like, no, Ra's belongs with Batman always. But I kind of like that people are being restructured because, again, this is a separate universe. So while it is always very fun and rewarding to see the characters come in against the people you're used to seeing them with, it is also an opportunity to play with that. And Ra's is a character who you really can move around because of that backstory and that kind of, history being immortal. And like when you have immortal characters, you can really put them where you like. And building him up in that way instead of Lex, I kind of appreciate, because it would have been a bit obvious, I feel like, to go with another kind of Lex,
Yes. Yeah. And speaking of Mr. Luthor, given that he turned up in Absolute Evil, do you think he will be a Superman villain? Or do you think they'll deploy him somewhere else?
I'm not sure. I don't think I'd mind if they put him against Superman. I heard a very interesting theory that some people were saying, what if he ends up being for Martian Manhunter? Because we don't have anybody like exactly directly in that kind of same position, because he's got the white Martian thing going on, but he doesn't have his oligarch. So they're like, well, so he needs one too.
Yeah, I could see that.
I enjoyed that they have a couple of mystery things about him. As somebody pointed out in my Absolute Evil video, they're like, did you see that the wife that they gave him looks like Adara? And I'm like, I did not. But now that you pointed it off, like now you pointed out that his wife from the planet Lexor. I'm like, oh, actually, that is the design that she had. And then, of course, his mysterious belt buckle, which some people in my comments felt was like the nuclear man symbol from Superman 4 Quest for Peace.
Oh, I didn't even pick up on that. I thought it was just a sun. Ah, okay. I can see that.
Ryan Jones, thank you very much, is saying, boy, Darkseid, really Batman in this universe.
In that he is the absolute ruler. Yes, 100%.
I'm enjoying all the people who make the comments. They're like, this is just Darkseid's fanfic and he's cooking.
Yeah. Someone should take that panel from Absolute Martian Manhunter where Darkseid's creating the universe. He's just like, no, Batman goes over here. Batman stabs him in the eyes. Superman's just really tough. With his little action
cape
figures.
Is alive.
Pew, pew, pew. Yeah, perfect.
X-Men Superfan Emma Frost, thank you again, is saying, love absolute Catwoman, Afro-Latina queen. Do you think it's also a nod or tribute to Eartha Kitt, Halle Berry, and Zoe Kravitz?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how far I should go into this, but people often, I talked a lot about Batman Cape Crusader, which famously featured a lot of like race swap characters, and people were coming in, not many. I mean, it's probably like, maybe like, 1 in 100 maybe coming in going, you can't do this. It's outrageous. What about the sanctity of the comics? And I was like, well, I guess you'd never heard of Eartha Kitt. Billy D. Williams as Harvey Dent in the 80s. There is a history of race swapping, and it's not an issue at all. It's just part of the comic books and the tie-in media. I'm
always more concerned about how they're going to depict the character themselves. I'm like, if the character is poorly depicted, everything else can go out the window, because I'm not going to want to watch them because they're not going to be, interesting. And so far, I am enjoying what they're doing with Selena in this universe. And I think she's fun, and I'm glad she's there, because Bruce needs some tiny bit of happiness somewhere. In, like,
have you read the latest issue?
I have, yes.
Yes, no. I've got a video about it going out at the weekend, but I'll spoil a little bit of it now, where I don't trust her. I think she's been sent by the Joker, because she talks about, how she's seen what Venom does to people. Like, she's been in Ark M. Oh, where did she get this high-powered tech suit from? She's an orphan girl from Crime Alley. How did she get the money?
And she also dodged it when he asked about it. Yes. When he was like, well, what about that helmet? It's like Black Mask's helmet, like all the comments have been saying. And she's like, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. So I don't trust her. I think it's a great design. Reminds me of the Batman Beyond suit a little bit, with the ability to turn invisible and all that, the high-tech stuff built into it.
Yes. But in general, I said this when I did my regular Batman video, like the Matt Fraction one that they've started recently. It does feel that as we move forward in time, we're inching closer and closer to Neo Gotham, just in terms of how things are designed and everything. And I'm like, we need to bring back Batman Beyond and make that even more futuristic.
Yeah. It's curious how they don't do very much with Batman Beyond, isn't it? Because, Warner Brothers are obviously coming near to the end of their copyright ownership of Batman, or at least the early version of Batman. And they've kind of got Terry McGinnis right there in the palm of their hands that they could transition to and keep copyright control of that forever, or at least, another 70 years or whatever it is. But they won't.
I know that they're doing a comic mini with him soon, the crossover with Static.
Yeah.
I know. We take what we can get, okay?
I shouldn't complain.
It's like they acknowledged him this year. So which of all of them intrigues you the most in terms of where it's going? Like, which one gives you like the most theories, or makes you, after you're done, you're like, ooh, look, I wonder exactly,
Do you know, probably Green Lantern. Just because they've changed up the whole it's a philosophical spectrum of light rather than an emotional spectrum of light. So I find myself thinking about, what are the implications? And okay, if in this universe the red energy is restraint, what does that mean for, say, Atrocitus or Dexter? I want to see Dexter. That's what I really want.
I enjoyed the way that they recast the Green Lanterns as Black Stars through that kind of
Yes.
philosophy. And I was like, actually, that makes a lot of sense. And it ties in with the rest of the universe. And he actually got to cement that tie in Absolute Evil, because Al Ewing wrote that one as well,
Yeah.
in terms of the way that order functions in that universe, and like the speech that he has the Joker make. What do you think about this theory going around there that the Joker has misinterpreted how the universe works? Because that's the thing I've seen floating around. They're like, actually, the Joker's got it wrong, and that's why they're all going to fail, because actually he didn't get the message right.
Maybe. I mean, in my head, I'm envisaging kind of an absolute crisis at the end, that much like the original crisis that involved all the Earths coming together, it will be the main line and the absolutes coming together to overcome this inherently wicked place.
There are some teases of them maybe getting to see each other quite soon.
Yes, yeah. Read DCKO for that. That was the bit that made me raise an eyebrow.
I know. I was like, I had two reactions. I was like, I'm excited, but also it's too soon.
yeah. It's funny that, isn't it? Even so, when Mirror Master showed up in the the mainline universe version of Mirror Master showed up in the Free Comic Book Day special, I was like, oh no, keep them separate. And I've had kind of a similar reaction to the crossover with Wonder Woman and Batman.
Oh, yes, that's coming very soon. Yes.
Yeah. If there was just an issue of Wonder Woman that Batman was in, great. Okay, that's fair enough. But the fact that it's an issue of Wonder Woman and an issue of Batman, just I don't like it. Even though I'm reading both books, I had a strong reaction to the X-Men relaunch when they had their whatever it was, Raid on Grey Melkin crossover, where it was X-Men, Uncanny X-Men alternating for a month or two. And then they immediately followed it up with a line-wide crossover with all of the books, including ones I wasn't reading. And I just said, you know what, this is actually my drop-off point. I don't want to go back to this. So maybe it's like a hang-up from that, a holdover from that, I should say. But it's nowhere near as bad.
I think part of it is that it's nice to be in on the ground floor of something and see it build up. And the fact that it has been building up so well, I think there is that kind of holdover fear from having been through several not great crossovers, to be like, oh no, like what if this is one of those where like all progress is halted, or like the tones of the characters don't match in the books and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it does sound like the writers are very closely collaborating with each other, so it probably won't be.
No, it's very, there is a synchronicity in a lot of the line, and a clear, again, intentionality as to what each book is about and what the universe is about. And so that's managed even in the ones that are a bit more off or conceptual, like Martian Manhunter and the like, to maintain all of that, because they keep returning to it. There's always one issue at some point that manages to mention in its own way that like the universe, it has its injustice and all of those kind of things. And again, it's very interesting how each book does that, because Wonder Woman's is really interesting because it explicitly comes out and goes like, this is wrong. Like, this is not the way it's supposed to be. Whereas you have others where it's just like, this is how it is. And it is the way it's supposed to be. So I'm very intrigued in that sense to the reaction to the mainline universe in that way. I would love to see a kind of updated take on Crisis on Earth 3, which because of when it was written back in the 60s, they have Ultraman give this kind of one line where he's like, I saw this Earth, and on this Earth, the superpowered beings stopped crime, but then he just moves past it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, that's actually a really interesting, concept of like, what would that do to you? Like psychologically, just see this world where everything is completely seemingly inverted, and I'm like, that would be fun, because the reaction that the mainline heroes would have to it. They've had it before with, other universes that have been bad. So I'm like, I kind of want to see the opposite reaction the other way, especially from the heroes who now get to see these other versions of themselves who seem to be off living like their best lives and stuff like that. I'm like, what would that do to you? That's just interesting.
Yeah. I liked in it was Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely's Justice League or JLA Earth 2 graphic novel, where there was just kind of like this quiet resignation when they realized that in the Earth 2 universe it is impossible for good to win. So they're just like, oh, Well, I guess we better go then. I mean, we'll try to make things better. We'll fence Gotham off, but not really much else we can do.
They re-released that recently, actually. I saw they gave it like a nice updated edition.
Yeah.
X-Men Superfan, thank you very much. Saying, do you guys have thoughts on Eartha Kitt as Catwoman or her legacy on the character? I like all the Catwomen from Batman 66. Honestly, I think they all bring something unique to it. I love Eartha Kitt because I like Eartha Kitt's voice. I always have liked her singing. I like just the way she speaks. The fact she gave that like really distinct purr, like so aggressive to the character.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I alluded to this earlier, but she kind of paved the way to show that, hey, it's okay to have people of color play these traditionally white characters. It ultimately doesn't matter. It's all about their performance above all else.
I mean, that was already happening with the Joker, with Cesar Romero. So.
Yeah, I suppose, although he was under a layer of white makeup, wasn't he? So it's kind of hard.
Except for his mustache, which they dyed green.
Yes, yeah, perfect.
I was like, the commitment. I was like, yes.
Yeah, well, that mustache was his trademark, so he wasn't going to shave it off for no silly cartoon role.
No, it's like Pedro Pascal. It's like he did it once. He's like, never again. For Maxwell Lord, that was the movie where he decided he wasn't going to do it again. People forget about the Pedro Pascal as Maxwell Lord. Whenever I put it in a video, it's like a jump scare for some people. They're like, whoa, wait. I'm like, yeah. Ryan Jones, thank you very much for saying Absolute Universe is Darkseid's Earth X.
Yeah, in a way. I was going to say it's kind of a bit more like the Crime Syndicate Earth. But yeah, I mean, Earth X also works because it's a place where evil wins. So yeah.
Some people kind of also compare it to the DCAU Justice Lords kind of universe that they did in lieu of having a Crisis Earth, because that ended up being the movie Crisis on Two Earths.
Yeah.
So because they ended up having to switch things around and that kind of thing, which I think worked out better for them in the long run. Yeah. Beard up, beard down. Thank you very much for saying, why is Superman's text reflected in DCKO 1, page 15?
I wondered that as well. And I wondered if perhaps the text was different. So I spent a long time scrutinizing it, reading it backwards. But no, it is exactly the same text. And I don't know why they did that. It's an interesting stylistic choice. I don't know that it'll have any significance because it didn't seem to in that issue, unless Scott Snyder brings it back in the fourth issue, the last page going, this is what it means.
I thought at first they were referring to the text they changed, which I'm going to do a short on. There's a short line that they changed in the intro when they're playing games in between the preview and issue 1. It's when they're talking about like what they're doing and like their families and the like. The original line in the preview is they talk about their children, Damian, John, Elizabeth. And then in the actual release, it's they talk about their children, and then it goes on. It doesn't list the children.
Interesting.
And it's just it's a slight change. I think for the better. Personally, I think the second line flows better, but also that if they had listed 3, people would get up in arms. But what about aren't they their children too?
Yeah. The Jason Todd disrespect continues.
Yeah, they're like, and Tim, they're like,
yeah. Oh yeah.
Although that's another discussion that's been going on that's been very interesting. They're like, what should Tim be Robin? That's always one that pops up like every now and again, especially now that he's foregrounded again in the Batman book. They're like, is that what we want for Tim? And I'm like, I want good things for Tim.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I don't mind if he's Robin again. He's got his distinctive red costume back again.
Yes.
I don't think being, what was it? He was called Drake at one point.
He was Drake when he had the brown costume, and then after Damian unceremoniously dethroned him, he was Red Robin.
Yeah.
And he had the costume that people feel is like Dr. Midnight's costume. They're like, he was just Dr. Midnight.
Yeah. So it's the one designed by Alex Ross, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So who's somebody who you haven't seen in the Absolute Universe that you want to?
Lobo.
You're waiting for Lobo?
Yeah, I love Lobo. People may find that surprising considering I spend a lot of time talking about like feelings and psychology and the thought process behind these characters. But I just like Lobo because he gets drunk and beats stuff up.
I joked about it a little in the Absolute Evil video, but I would actually like to see Absolute Punchline, especially now that we have spoilers. But people have seen it. I wasn't one of the people who put it out
Yeah.
there. It's around if you want to go find it. But to me, that leaves space. Depending upon how they do it. I'm like, to me, that leaves a lot of space. And I would actually like to see that in this universe, because I still feel that the original potential is untapped, and I will cling to that.
Yes, yeah. I might be misremembering this, but not wanting to spoil the reveal of that character. But I'm sure I read a report from a panel, like a convention panel, where Scott Snyder said, well, if this character is going to be aligned with Batman, then Joker should get his own Robins, right? A bit like the Batman Who Laugh and his
with the chained up Jokerized Robins and stuff.
So I feel like that idea may be revisited.
We'll see. A lot of people are feeling that the Demon Joker idea is about to be revisited. The kind of like pale man, eldritch, like always there kind of thing. Because the cover that we were given for 15 with the horrific, monstrous potential Joker form, lots of people are trying to predict, is he going to transform into that, or what is it? There were some people who had some theories as to like if it was going to be another person, that kind of thing. So it's interesting. We'll have to, I mean, if they keep ramping up the level with the villains, I don't know where we're going to end up.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about the Scarecrow next year. That's supposed to be the big
I'm excited
one.
for the Scarecrow. I'm like, well, he's going to have to be absolutely horrific if we've done this already. So
yeah, it'd be like the guy from Jeepers Creepers.
Jace Cooney, thank you very much, is asking, would you guys want an Absolute Aquaman series? He is the only OG member to not get a series.
I'm not opposed to it. It would depend on the story they're telling and the creative team, but yeah. Let's see why not.
feel they've left space for it too, because in Absolute Wonder Woman, they've introduced the concept of like, Atlantis, Atlanteans, like those kind of things. And so you do have room now for what happened to it. And, those kind of spaces where you could put Aquaman. Although it's not guaranteed you'll have a good fate in this universe should you arrive. R.I.P. Ollie.
Yeah.
Although I can't say anything because Ollie's not my fave. So
I liked Kevin Smith's run on Green Arrow back in the day. I enjoyed that.
I like the runs. I don't like Ollie. So it's really funny. Like I will always read Green Arrow comics. Like people are like, why do you read these? And I like the comics and I think he's a good character. I just don't like him, if that makes any sense. But I'm like, he's still interesting to read about. But they are going to do the Absolute Green Arrow series, I believe. So it'll be fun to see what they do with that. If they go with one of the legacy people or if they cast it a little bit, before when he was still active and his this time not rip off Arrow cave. It's like, this time I'm the only one with a cave. I'm like, that's why you had to die.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that book. I'm not really massively familiar with the writer of it, but if he's anything like any of the other writers on the series, it's going to be good.
Have you found that reading the Absolute books has made you less inclined towards the mainline books? Has it increased you wanting to read them? Or has it not made much of a difference in terms of what you're gravitating towards?
So do you know what? In terms of my own personal enjoyment, I don't think it's really changed very much. But what I think has happened, and I could be completely wrong here, but I feel like it's kind of raised the bar generally across the board, because DC's books generally are much better now than they have been for years. Yeah. And there was a period sort of pre-COVID where the books just existed, they weren't bad, but they just felt like they were just trudging along. Whereas now I feel like, particularly Matt Fraction's Batman,
there's such an excitement.
Yeah, even the Superman book, Superman Unlimited, I really look forward to reading that every month as well, by Dan Slott. That'd be very creative and very fun. And I think it's the darkness of the Absolute book, I think, has kind of opened the door for content on the opposite side of the spectrum, like the Metamorpho miniseries and Supergirl, who are very much like even Superman Unlimited. They're callbacks to the Silver Age of comics. Yes. And I really like the diversity in terms of stories at the moment.
I feel like they're reinforcing each other. I kept thinking that when I was reading DCKO, specifically in chapter 2, when they start to do their prep for getting ready to go to the competition, and they're getting the world ready, you know, keeping it safe. And they have this, it's really brief and they don't linger on too long, but they're just like, we got all the companies of the world together, and like we made these mega arcs and all of this kind of stuff to keep the earth safe. And all I was thinking of when I was reading that was flashing back to Absolute Evil and their, you know, cabal of like evil business people. And I was like, it's such a nice contrast just in the way that it's really all these books are kind of, I don't even know if they're all like intending to do it in that way, but they're just kind of building up this kind of base concept of like this world has a different base in terms of the way things trend and the like, versus the Absolute, where it feels like, oh, you wouldn't really see that. But then it's really reinforcing the mainline universe as this kind of like optimistic and hopeful place, while not undercutting the fact that the heroes still serve that function in the Absolute universe, which is something I really appreciate.
Yeah, I feel similarly. They've done a very good job, I think, across the board of just kind of bringing everything together and enhancing the good points and kind of shuffling some of the weaker points away.
X-Men Superfan, thank you very much, is saying, I wonder how angry the Comic Code Authority people got at Midnighter Gay Batman happened. You can't escape it. And he is from a team called The Authority. Well, by that point, the Comic Authority was way in terms of any kind of influence or reach. It does amuse me that that's just basically canon Superbat, though.
Yeah. I like The Authority. I enjoyed reading that back in the day as well. Just thinking about some of the more extreme scenes.
I know. Ben Chan, thank you very much, is saying, would you want Absolute Earth to eventually do regular crossovers with Prime DCU like the old Earth 1, Earth 2 days? Or should they mostly stay separate? I think what worked a lot about those crossovers in like the JLA, JSA era is that it's two hero groups teaming up on two similarly aligned Earths. Whereas this Earth has such a different moral alignment and compass. I'm not sure how you would make that work. Maybe I'm not seeing it at the moment, but I think also part of what makes those other ones work is people were really attached to getting to revisit those classic, you know, Golden Age heroes. Not that they didn't ever use them other places, because they did sometimes, but it was a really cool way to see characters who otherwise, you know, don't necessarily have ongoing books or series or things going on. I just, maybe it's just that I'm really not ready for them to cross over yet.
I feel like it's too soon. But then again, I'll probably be saying that like 5 years from now, like, no, keep them separate. And
it's interesting because it has been a year, but it simultaneously feels long and short at the same time.
Yeah, it does. It does. I almost couldn't believe that it had been a full year. And I was like, no, actually, that is right. That is how the calendar works. It has been a year.
I remember promising on a stream a while back, I was like, I'll do a year-end catch-up. And now it's here. I'm like, oh no, it's that time. And that is not in sight. So we shall see.
Maybe an 18-month check-in.
Maybe like peeking in through the universes through the lens of certain characters. We'll see what we can do. Definitely need to probably check back in when they do the Absolute Joker issue, because people are always fascinated by the Joker, and that's funny to me, because when I interviewed Scott the one time and he was talking about how he was aiming to make the scariest Joker and that kind of thing. And I got some comments on the video I just did that was like, the Joker's so hot. And I'm like, every time. Every single time.
Yeah, actually, that is kind of funny, because he in a way, he looks a little bit like mainline Bruce Wayne, doesn't he?
A tiny bit. Like he's still, a lot of people pointed out they felt that they were pulling some of the DCAU look for him in like certain iterations. And I did think about some of the Mask of the Phantasm look they give him. And then also people were talking about the new Batman adventures for how he is framed in some of the, like the when Brainiac's watching them and stuff, and the way his eyes are.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. And it's funny because I hadn't immediately thought of that. And I was like, no, actually, that really does look like that.
Yeah. And I think that's just another example of the way that the creative team and all of these books are just pulling from everywhere to create something new. And it's one of the things I really enjoy about it. It's almost like the Captain America meme of I get that reference.
Yeah. I was trying to make the compound age happen in my Captain Comet video. I was countered with the alloy age, and I was like, no, come on, compound age, guys. Let's make it happen. Just because the only reason I think of it that way is because it is an era where it feels like so many things are being pulled from. They overtly talk about pulling from the Silver Age. Like Superman did it when he had Superboy Prime punch the wall again, even though he didn't do that in the Silver Age. Where I had one of those like hyper nerd moments, and I was like, that wasn't the Silver Age actually. But it just made me think of, we are pulling from all of these different times to really create something that feels a bit different and a very, very of this era, but not in a cringy, overtly topical way, if that makes any sense. It's referencing issues. It's referencing things that are going on, but in the kind of way where I feel like I could read this in, 5-10 years time and not have one of those moments like when you're reading one of the 66 issues where you can tell they told them, put the slang in the book, and
yeah,
that kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree.
What do you foresee, like, it just casting forward? Do you see this line overtaking the main line? Because that's an interesting thing that I hear people be concerned about. They're like, what if this gets so popular that they only make Absolute?
I mean, I'd be surprised if they'd be willing to chuck away nearly 100 years of history, right? I don't think they would do that. If anything, I mean, I'm kind of expecting the Absolute story, from this universe to have a very clear beginning, middle and end. Even if it, ends up running for 100 issues, it will be like The Walking Dead. And you know how like The Walking Dead and Invincible and these other series with beginning, middles and end are just like perennial bestsellers. They recently released a new what do they call it? Like a new trade paperback collection with slightly different covers for Walking Dead and Invincible, I think. And the comic shop in London, Gosh Comics, they sold out within the first day. And it's like, who is still buying all these things? But apparently people are. And I think kind of a problem with the mainline comics is it's not very clear where to begin. And it's not really very clear when it's going to end, because it probably never will. Whenever people say to me, oh, what Batman comics should I read? I say, listen, start with Batman Year One, read The Dark Knight Returns, and then pick anything you want. Anything that looks interesting to you, and you'll probably be okay. Because there's just so many stories, and it's kind of sad in a way that a lot of like sort of mid to late 70s, early 80s comics pre-crisis have kind of become irrelevant almost, because there's hundreds of issues, but they don't really get collected, they don't get shared, they don't get really talked about all that much.
There are these gap eras
that
I feel that quite profoundly, because I love to go to those historic issues, and there are just some eras where, particularly around the implosion and the explosion and those kind of things, as we start to lead up to Crisis, where they just leave it alone, or they only collect things in very specific types of chunks. Like, part of how I've been able to do this Crisis Countdown series is that they collect the crises, they separate them out from the rest of the line. But I'm like, I think it would be really interesting to just take some of these series and just put them out there. I cannot be the only person who wants to read all of the classic Captain Comet stories. I refuse to believe that.
Yeah, well, you've got one up on me there. I mean, I probably wouldn't read them. I mean, unless they were like dropped in front of me and someone said, please read these. Like, okay, all right, fine. But I wouldn't seek them out.
They released some of them in the latest DC's Finest, where they did Strange Adventures. They took some and put them in there. The one that has the gorilla on the cover. But it, alas, did not even have all the times he fought gorillas. And I was like, how dare you? You put a gorilla on the cover.
Yeah, and actually, just thinking about it, that kind of makes me sad. Actually, that there's these people who dedicated their lives to creating this artwork decades ago, and it's just gone.
It's weird to think about. Like when I was going through some research for some Conan things, and I always try and if it's possible or it's archived or they've reprinted it, to find the old pulp magazines that they're from. And when you go through those, I'm like, there are some really interesting, other stories in there that just for whatever reason, they didn't catch, didn't take off. They've just kind of been lost. And I'm like, some of these characters and things are actually really intriguing. And it would be kind of cool to see, do something with it. But then again, I'm sure there's gonna be tons of things from this era too that end up in that pile eventually. X-Men Superfan Emma Frost, thank you very much. Saying, what do you guys think of the Secret Six miniseries? Do you want a new run of Secret Six? I personally found the mini a mixed bag, especially except for the cat shot call outs too focused on the heroes.
I kind of bounced off of it. I gave it 3 issues and kind of lost interest. It was always floating near the bottom of my to read pile. And I thought, well, I should probably just not keep buying it then.
I stuck with, and it gave me what I wanted, which was Jay broke up with I was like, I've been waiting. And they started to set Jay on the villain arc for which I feel he has been intended from the beginning of his inception. So I was just like, yes. But then I don't know if they're actually going to go anywhere with it, which would make me sad.
Yeah. To be honest, I'm not like a massive fan of them taking like significant others of the characters and then just like who are normal civilians and then just turning them into either superheroes or supervillains. It would be nice if he could just remain as a civilian, I
know what you mean. I do lament the just regular characters building out the universe. So you would still visit and still have stories where they wouldn't necessarily need to be focused on, but they would just be there doing stuff. It helps make the universe feel balanced and in a way that it doesn't when every single person, feels like they're getting powers or doing things. I liked when they did it with Lois recently because that to me was a reference to all the times that used to happen. I knew it wasn't gonna be permanent. So I was like, it's fine. Like she'll be back to normal and all of that stuff. And we got some fun stories and I liked the costume. So but on the whole, it would be nice to have just some more people who, are just, again, there. It's just for me, for Jay specifically, when he appeared on the scene, I was like, so he's evil, right? And the comic was just like, no.
What made you think he was evil just from looking at him?
Not just from looking at it. It was the way he acted. There were just the way that he justified his actions, the way he tried to ingratiate himself with John's mom and, with Lois and stuff like that. He just didn't have a lot of remorse for certain things. And even though the comic tried to justify it, it never fully, I felt like, explored it as it could. And then it also started to introduce potential love triangle things with Ash and things that also went nowhere. And I was like, what happened to Ash? Am I the only person who remembers Ash? As you can see, I was invested in this.
I must admit, I'd forgotten about Ash, so clearly I wasn't that invested.
Well, I mean, he wasn't that great. But again, it was just that I was such a Jay hater that I was like, ooh, Ash.
Anyone's better than this.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like I would take some civilian barista at a coffee shop. I'm taking anything at this point, But I thought it was, in terms of a mini, I thought it was pretty decent. I think it had its ups and downs, but I think Nicole Maines in general has really come a long way in terms of writing series and those kind of things. So because I've read most of the things that she's written with Dreamer and all of that stuff. So. And actually, everything has Dreamer. And I think it was her Instagram. She was even lightly making fun of herself that she always writes about Dreamer. So, which was cute. But I don't know. With minis, it's difficult to keep up with because there are so many. And it's kind of you got to prioritize, what am I keeping up with? Especially when at the moment, there are so many mainline things I'm keeping up with, not just at the big 2 either, but also in the indie space. I'm deep into certain indie things. Rook Exodus came back last week and a whole bunch of other things. So I'm like, oh man, got so much to keep up with.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem, isn't it? There's just so many comics coming out. It's impossible to keep up with them all.
That's a good problem, though. It's a fun problem. And like I noticed that people are they're getting into like the trades and stuff too a lot. I see a lot of people coming in and picking up the absolute trades or looking for them, and like absolute Batman just doesn't exist at the store I go to because it's always gone, like all the trades and everything. They're like, "Would you like absolute Superman?" They're like, "I came for Batman."
Please read Absolute Wonder Woman. Yeah, I guess that would explain why there's an Absolute Batman annual this month and none of the others are getting it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then there's the Absolute Arkham special as well in December.
Yes, I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, me too. I do think it's kind of weird how Dr. Arkham works at Arkham. But then I suppose in the real world, you had Doug Bowser as the president of Nintendo. So it happens.
Well, sometimes it's like we do need to get those references in there. Superman, I feel like, does that the most tongue-in-cheekedly. Like the one where they're rescuing Cal and Jimmy's going, "Come on, pal." We gotta get things like that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Superman does need some levity because otherwise there's a lot of angst for Superman there.
Yes, yeah. But it's another one that's very much about, you know, getting in touch with your feelings and expressing your emotions, isn't it? I think that's a very positive message from these books, even if the subject matter can be quite dark. It's all about, you know,
well, that's processing. The thing is that they're paradoxically very hopeful.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, no, you can go against these systems. You can still fight. You can still, you know, find joy and do these things and find friendships and all of that. And there is something really earnest about that. It's not doom porn or like, you know, like that kind of thing, which these kind of stories can sometimes veer into. Like, I've read some Elseworlds or What Ifs where it's just like, what if it was just awful? And that's like the entire point.
Yeah. Did you ever read back in the day Ruins by that
some
was
people compare this to Ruins and I'm like, I don't think so. I'm like, no.
No, Ruins, there was no hope in that at all.
No, Ruins is one that I actually struggled to reread. Like I love to reread things and go back to them just to re-examine, you know, like, ooh, do I still feel the same way? Do I still like it? Do I still not like it? Those kind of things. But Ruins was so bleak that I'm just like, I don't know. I don't think I got it in me.
Yeah. Thank goodness it was only 2 issues.
But it leaves such an impression. That's the thing. Like even all these years later, people just like Ruins and that's it, you know?
Yeah.
Are you also a rereader? Go back and see how you feel about it later type person?
Not so much, no, because as I said, there's so much coming out. I don't really have the time to go back and look at stuff. Occasionally I might do. I subscribe to DC Universe Infinite, so I can get access to the old comics and, you know, take screenshots for my videos. But, you know, I will occasionally go, like I went back and read Detective Comics 400, first appearance of Man-Bat.
Yeah.
Just to reread that short story just the other week. I enjoyed that. But the recent stuff less so.
I feel like I'm going to want to revisit this, but maybe in like 5 years or something like that, because so many people right now are saying like, it's just like our world. It's just like this. I'm so curious what that vibe is going to be like a little bit onward. And perhaps that's a weird way to, you know, look at media, but it's always something that I'm cognizant of because I'm looking at things through so many different eras. And then you'll have books that come out and completely just bomb at their time. Like they do not land.
Yeah.
And then years later, people reassess them. And same with things that are really well received. And then you look at them now and people are like, you know what? Actually, you know what's really funny? I've seen a rise of people saying the first crisis, well, not the first crisis, the first like big world altering crisis on Infinite Earth. They're like, that was a mistake. We never should have. We shouldn't have done it. And I'm like, that's really interesting because so many of the ways the characters are now come post crisis, like particularly Superman.
Yeah.
But then I've seen people who are like, post crisis Superman was a mistake. And I'm like, that's so interesting. I'm like, you want to go back to like, how far back do you want to go? Because I read a lot of Silver Age Superman. I'm like, you don't want that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been rereading some of the post-crisis Superman stuff, and it did really initially start out as like, we're going to keep Superman grounded, we're going to make him the only like fantastical character in this universe, and it all degraded very quickly. Like, here comes Brainiac, who's a mesmerist who's been possessed by an alien spirit from space, and now his skin's gone green and he's grown a goatee. It's just wild stuff.
It's really fascinating reading the new history of the DC universe as it tries to grapple with some of that era, because it wasn't struggling so much in the Golden Age era, but now that it's gotten post-crisis and I see it trying to reconcile things, they're like, Supergirl, and they try and like, you know, cliff notes it as much as possible.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is too bad, because I actually think the Linda Danvers Supergirl series is really interesting.
Yeah, I remember enjoying it.
Yeah, the Peter David one, like it.
Yeah,
because it does have to try and explain, like, but how is she Supergirl? But like once it does that, it really just kind of goes off, and it's a really interesting and fun series.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just like, I guess I'm in a very excited place with comics right now, where I'm always enjoying comics in general, but just in this period, like I'm especially excited about them. And there's a lot, like there's more than I can talk about, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's difficult to kind of choose what to talk about and what to put your energy into, isn't it? Just because there's just so much good stuff. I would absolutely love to spend time talking about Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips' collaborations, because I think they're the best current, like, frequent collaborators in comics at the moment. And I loved the Reckless series and their new Criminal graphic novel that just came out. I've just completely blanked on the title, but I thought it was excellent. Really loved it. It's the longest thing they've done in a long time, and I'd love to spend time talking about it, but there just aren't enough hours in the day.
They recently released a hardcover of Brian K. Vaughan's Spectators. And I was like, ooh, I want to talk about Spectators, and then also think about all the pages I'll have to censor. But it was just, but it's one of those things where you do have to pick and choose. But at the same time, it's fun because I feel like there are so many conversations going on. It's like we were talking a bit beforehand, though. It's like, it's just finding them. It's like, ooh, like, where are they happening? We know they're happening somewhere because people are reading these books and they are excited about them. And I feel that excitement and interest when I go in, you know, to the shop on occasion, and people are actually, you know, like mad grabbing for certain titles. So I'm like, am I gonna have to elbow somebody to get like the new history of the DC universe? But
wow, I never thought I'd hear someone say that. Get out of my way, I must get this new history of the DC universe.
It's funny because I went with my husband, and I do just happen, I'm not a huge cover person, but I happen to have all the same cover artists for this one. And my husband isn't into comics at all, so he just went and grabbed a random one. And I was at the back because there was such a big crowd. I was like, the wrong one. I was like, you got to get the other one.
Yeah.
But it's a fun energy. And what's really fun for me is I like to also keep an ear to the fandom. And I'm also on TikTok lightly. I don't use it too much, but I'm on it, and because somebody tried to steal my identity. So I'm like, I'm getting on there first. And it's really interesting to see that there's so many, I feel like, newer fans really gravitating towards this hobby and getting excited about it. And I love that because there have been periods, and it goes in and out, it's not a new thing, where people will say that comics are dead. They're like, they're dead and they're not coming back and they're not going to print them anymore and nobody wants them, and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And it's always exciting to see that no, people still really want this. I'm seeing people like in their 20s and stuff doing, you know, comic book hauls and like, this is what I bought at the store and like all that kind of stuff. I'm like, that's so fun because there is something unique about this medium and this forever story. And as much as it can be frustrating sometimes to know, like, where do I start or that kind of thing, there's something really special about the fact that it is still going, that you can find a spot to jump in, that there is still all this interest all these years later, that people care this passionately about like the color of like Batman's costume almost 100 years later, you know?
Yeah, it is good. And It's something that I had noticed a couple of years ago going to like conventions or going into comic shops, that it was mostly people my age and older. So it is very good to hear about younger people going in and, you know, keeping the hobby going.
Because I'm like, that's what you need. You need the young people. That's why sometimes when I hear a critique of a work or something that's like, oh, like this is like kids would like this or that kind of thing, I'm like, that's good. I think I'm like, I like comics that my kids can read, should they so choose. Not some of the absolute books, but
not yet. Give it like 10 years.
Not yet. We were going strong with Absolute Batman, and then Bane like popped eyes out of skulls in that dream sequence, like crushed the penguin into a thing. And I was like, oh, we better.
We'll just skip this page.
I know, it's like, what's on that page? Nothing. You know? Need an edited version.
It'll just be one panel then, won't it?
It's like, look at Batman. And then X-Men Superfan, thank you very much, is saying, thoughts if Cape Crusader happens in different version of the 40s and 50s or closer to ours, because there is a reference that the actor needed to hide his sexuality, but Montoya and Quinn are openly like kind of, I get what you're saying, like flirting kind of thing.
Yeah, so thing to keep in mind is the person that said that the actor had to hide his sexuality was Clayface. He was kind of, I don't want to, you could read it as him like trying to besmirch that person, like to make him seem bad. But at the same time, yeah, I guess there's a difference between, you know, being able to be your authentic self out in public in a closed off space as well, versus being a very open figure in like the public eye. And I think Cape Crusader was very much a world like ours, but perhaps idealized. There were still like nods and references to bigotry and homophobia, etc. There's a line with Bullock where he says to Gordon, like, do you really think the squad are going to accept Montoya as the leader because she's, and he's like, not another word. But yeah, does that answer your question? I hope it did. I was a bit rambly there.
Yeah, I think it's because I think the question was about like whether it's an exact duplicate or something kind of off, and like I think it is like a slightly off version, not a 1-to-1, and I don't think it was ever intended to be a 1-to-1.
No, and it's funny again. I'll spend a lot of time talking about people that say things that annoy me, but people come in and go, "I hate Cape Crusader because it was not at all accurate. It gives people an inaccurate reflection of what it was like in the 40s. There was no tolerance of homosexuals. You didn't have people of color in position of authorities." I asked them if they were upset by the bulletproof rocket-powered Batmobile or the face-altering serum, or is it just like people that are different to you existing and succeeding that causes you to get upset? They never come back and answer it, so I think I know the answer.
I like the alternate takes. Like I do. I also appreciate when some things go for the you know, gritty kind of actual, this is what it was like. Something like Sandman, like the Sandman Mystery Theater, where it really goes into trying to replicate that kind of atmosphere. And I admire that too, but I'm like, sometimes that is not what you want, because that kind of thing is heavy and it's a lot. And it's, this show at the same time is geared towards, you know, kind of a more all ages kind. I'm like, if you were to do that, I wish it had explored a little bit more, but I'm like, if you were to hit it as hard, I'm not sure how pleasant and like how you would have been able to, you almost would have had to make the show that, in my opinion, like, we're going to deal with these issues and stuff now, which is fine, but it would have been a very different, you know, type of experience. I think there's room for both. And I think as long as you're clear from a creative perspective about what you're going for, I'm like, people don't have to like it, but as long as you're like, this is what I'm doing and this is what we're presenting, then it comes like a take it or leave it. But
Yeah.
there are works out there that do dive more into like, this is the 40s actually. And so
Yeah. Like what was it called? Batman First Night. It's recently got a sequel.
yeah, First Night, and now it's Second Night.
Yeah, Second Night. I mean, that had a whole thing about anti-Semitism in Gotham, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a good read. Quite heavy though, as you said.
That's the thing. It's like, when you're going to tackle it, I'm like, if you're going to tackle it, I want you to take the time to actually invest in it, which is why I like something like Sandman Mystery Theater, where it just takes entire issues. There's a whole, almost the entire second half of the series ends up dealing with like Diane's abortion. And I'm just like, that's a lot. And not everybody wants to read that. And it's really heavy. And I can see why it took so long to get those last issues collected, which they finally were. And now I have them. I was at the store so fast when they released it. Because this is the third time they've tried to collect it. They've tried to collect it 3 times. They got up to a certain point and then they just stop. I'm like, this time they finished. And finally. Are there any releases you're waiting on? There are a couple of things that, like, your dream release of, like, if there was something that you would like to see collected.
Well, okay, so there's something that I've been just waiting for a long time for, and that is a proper collection of Gotham Adventures, the early 2000s New Batman Adventures tie-in comic. They do like a couple of issues here and there, but they've never collected like the whole run. And there was a period in time where that was like the best Batman book on the stands by a long way. I've got all the issues, but I want a nice compendium, or even better, an omnibus, like a hardcover, to go with my other ones, to sit on my shelf that I can occasionally just like flip through when the mood takes me.
We're close too, because they did the Batman Beyond tie-in compendium and the like. So it's like, maybe I would love if they did that for all the tie-ins, for science, like, the Batman series and things like that. There's some interesting things actually happened in the Batman comic. It was not, I feel like sometimes people look down a bit on the cartoon tie-in comics. I'm like, there is a lot of really solid work going on there. And people will come at me because I know how people feel about Teen Titans Go, but the Teen Titans Go comic is super fun.
I like Teen Titans Go. I feel like people that don't like Teen Titans Go haven't actually watched it properly. They might have seen a trailer, maybe watched half of an episode and heard some fart jokes and gone, no, I don't like this. But Teen Titans Go, there's one of the funniest things I've seen, that I'm going to take this to my grave, is the episode where Robin tries to explain how currency works.
Yes.
And Beast Boy decides that bees and wasps and other insects are currency. And now Robin, who's, he's got all this cash, but now it's worthless. So he's destitute and poor, and he has to come to Beast Boy to beg for some bees.
In his like hive.
Yeah. He's like, dance for your bees, peasant. And he has to do like a twerky little dance. And he looks so sad. In fact, I have this. Hang on.
That's amazing.
He has to dance for his bees. Right, that's enough of that. That's like one of the only things I have, like an opened figure on my desk here, because I love that scene so much, and it wouldn't have existed in, the original Teen Titans.
No.
You wouldn't have seen that in the Wolfman and Perez run on Teen Titans. But it's one of my favorite things with the characters.
I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's cleverer than people give it, credit for, because it does go so lowbrow on occasion. but it also, again, is an entry point. And those are things that I have a soft spot for. I'm a really big, like, even the little Batman movie, the Christmas one that they did recently. Like, my kids loved that movie. And and they're doing a series. I saw the first posters for it,
that
coming
took me by surprise as well. I was like, oh, that's getting a series. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I had heard, but then I didn't hear anything about it for a while. Like, sometimes when you stop hearing about a thing, it just means they're trying to like quietly not make it happen. But then the posters emerged. I was like, oh, we're still doing it. And it's hard these days with the clickbait article titles to know what they're talking about, because they'll just say like, this animated Batman show just got canceled. You're like, which one? That's you need to tell me.
Yeah. And there's a distinction, I think, between being cancelled and reaching the end of its run.
Yes, that's hugely different, because sometimes things wrap up. And there's also a difference between deciding not to continue on with something and canceling it. as well. Because to me, canceled has a very specific, like, we had plans and we were going to do stuff and now we can't because we're canceled.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it's been interesting to see some of the books they've tried and, you know, some of like where they're going or not going. I know Green Arrow is wrapping up at the same time that
it's not a good month to be a Green Arrow fan, is it?
I got a comment that made me laugh. I was like, well, his comic ended in this universe, so his life ended in the absolute universe. I don't make the rules. No, it's just, I can't think of a concrete ranking. This entire time I've been trying to see if I can rank them in my mind, because that is a question that I will often get asked in terms of, for people who are maybe new to it or looking to jump in, or they're not entirely sure. They're like, okay, well, how would you rate them? Like, which one should I, you know, jump in with? And I think my answer to that would be, which character are you the most interested in?
Yeah, I never thought I would live to see the day where I would be recommending a Martian Manhunter comic to people. No disrespect to the Martian Manhunter, but he hasn't had like the best history with his individual stories, right? He's more often than not like a backup character, and I love him. I think he's great. But when people ask for recommendations, go read Absolute Martian Manhunter. Read it now.
No, that one is, I would recommend that one to people from an artistic standpoint as well. For people who may be coming out as like, oh, comics, you know, it's like, no, you can do a lot with this medium. It doesn't stretch itself as much as it can, all the ways that it can. And this is really doing that. And I think that's worth seeing. And I think this is the kind of work that is going to inspire some people artistically in terms of what you can do, because some people are like, oh, there's some Shade the Changing Man in here, or some other things in here. I'm like, yes, but it's really, I feel like, ramped up, and also I would argue potentially a bit more accessible than some of Shade the Changing Man. I did go back and reread some of it when people were mentioning that, and I was like, no, I think this is a bit more penetrable than Shade the Changing Man was. Because you can, and I think it needs to be, because a lot of the themes it's working through are so emotional, because it is such an emotional book. And some people I've seen, they don't enjoy how much of like the marriage and his relationship and like are part of the comic. I'm like, that's intrinsic to it. Like that disconnect that he has, and how much of an important part of his life it is that he is disconnected from. I'm like, that's really central to it, because in many ways, like, he's almost an alien in his own life. And I'm like, that's so important to what's going on, that this alien presence has come, and it's what's making him, you know, able to connect and see things differently. And I think that that's really, really fascinating. It's something that a lot of people can really sink their teeth into, you know?
Yes, yeah. There's a particular panel in the issue during the heat wave where they have their head-to-head confrontation, and she says that she doesn't know him anymore. She doesn't even think he cares about them, and the shock on his face.
Yeah.
Where he's like, how can you possibly think that? I do everything for you. You know, you are my everything. I think that will probably resonate with a lot of people, and it's at least it's very meaningful to me.
No, I thought that too. Like, a lot of the conversations between them as a couple were just really raw and real type of couple conversations in a medium that has a history of being a bit trite about those kind of, you know, relationships. It was nice to see something presented with an interesting type of conflict that didn't boil down to, are they cheating? Which is like so often what those kind of things can boil down to. Or you can flip over to like the Marvel side of things, where it's like, if you're married, your life is over. And that's why Peter can't be married.
Ouch.
I have so many alarms set for all things. So but that is my alarm, because yes, life and all of those kind of things. So thank you so much for taking some time to just come and chat rambling absolute things. Just in general, I've been having a lot of fun reading these comics. So I was like, I wanted to chat with somebody who I know is also enjoying reading these comics and thinking about them as much as I am. So
thank you for inviting me. It's been fun.
Yes, it always is. And we'll probably end up collabing on something else in the future. We shall see. So thank you everybody who tuned in, and we'll both have more videos coming soon. I'll link all the stuff down below and use the new collab feature once it's archived, so you can check all, like, us all out and all that good stuff. And yeah, we'll see all of you soon.